teaching, we're alive. We're like diamonds in the sky. Teach bright like a diamond.
Hello, fellow fellows and fellow educators. This is Diamond Emerald bringing you another gem, good vibes, education, and motivation. Now, this is a lesson share demo specifically for my class, but I'm going to be offering a lot of pedagogical tools. And so stay tuned to see what you can get in terms of alignment, how to track progress over time, and how to basically pass an assessment in any type of teaching practicum course. Let's jump into it. So my students, what you are going to see here first is not an exact clean screen share, but everything on this tab is related to this presentation that I'm going to do right now. So you'll see this Google form here, lesson share demo model, and then you should be signed into your Hunter account. And then these are the questions that you're going to be answering, right? It's always good to preview the questions before you get going into whatever activity you're doing, whether you're a teacher or a student, right? And so it says, use the lesson plan and watch the lesson share video to complete the form to prepare for your lesson share coming up and to receive full credit for attendance on 2/18/2023. So the lesson plan attached to this on Google Classroom, you have the lesson plan. It's called Skins, my old last name, lesson share 23. And so you'll note here, it says read. So let's read it together. The following is the full lesson plan submitted for lesson 2 of my 3 to 5 lesson learning segment as part of my EdTPA exam in 2015, which I got mastery on, which is why I'm here instructing you. The components used in this lesson share assignment are highlighted in green. So I've included everything, but I specifically included in green what was just used for the segment you're going to see. So if you're doing this assignment, you don't need to submit everything that's here, but what's in green is what you should focus on, what you're submitting for your assignment. I'll make this a little bit bigger. And so we have here the topic of the 3 to 5 learning segment, answering short response questions using a writing strategy, teacher candidate, first name only, Diamond, that's me. All right, then we have our date. So now this template is from the EdTPA exam that I took in 2015. You know, your lesson plan template, whether you're one of my students or not, it does not have all of these cumbersome details. But here's some things that I do want to highlight: how the student is referred to in this text. These are all things that you should be thinking about, even if it isn't in your lesson plan. The primary learning target by May 2015, the learner will be able to answer short response argumentative written assignments. The area of curriculum we're focusing on is academic writing. The secondary learning target by May 2015, when writing a short response, the learner will independently use the RACE strategy, reset, answer, cite, explain, to self-monitor and improve the coherence of his response by correctly using the strategy 80% of the time for 5 consecutive days as recorded on a self-monitoring checklist. There's a lot in here, but I'm hitting all the components of making sure that I have a SMART goal, making sure that I have a strategy, making sure I have criteria for success. Even that self-monitoring and the 80%, all of those things are related. And then we have on the side just things to help me make sure that I'm meeting those goals, not in your lesson plan, but they're valuable regardless. Now we get to universal assigned for learning principles. I've listed 3 here, right? For just this portion, I would only need 1. I mentioned this in our last seminar. Focus on 1 and nail it. I use 3. Maximize transfer and generalization. Then I explain how I'm going to do that. Tools and assistive technology. You're going to see that, but I've explained why I'm using this. This is pre-COVID, right? So we have different things to think about. Not everyone's just doing this. And then supports for practice and performance. So the strategy is key, and what I'm using to make sure that he has fluency in writing this short response answer. We have some other things listed here that I'm not going to go over. Then we get to the bulk of the actual lesson plan, what's happening and when. And so you see here, what is going to appear in the video is mainly this first section. We note here, this is 5, 10, so we got 15, 18, 23, right? This is more than enough time. But note, I do these things in a short amount of time in the video. So even if your plan does not exactly match the timing of your lesson, that's totally fine. But this is what's happening. You're going to see me ask my student, Matt, or for this purposes, I use his initial MD. I'm going to ask Matt, or MD, what does race stand for? And I expect correct answers. Then I'm going to introduce a new topic to him and ask him to review how to make claims and counterclaims. We're going to give more information about this new topic, and then I'm going to assess him and his ability to make claims and counterclaims based on the information I've given him. And so that's all we're going to do for now. We're going to jump into the video.
R. What does the R stand for?
R?
Yes.
Restate.
What is A?
Answer.
What's C?
Cite evidence. Explain that. Cited evidence.
Thank you so much. Okay, so you remember a little bit ago we worked on making claims and counterclaims.
Yeah.
So the claim, do you remember what was that? What part of race is the claim?
Do you have the answer?
So when I say what part of race, I mean, is it the R, the A, the C, or the E?
R.
Is it just the R?
And the A.
It is the R and the A. So can you verbally, let's try a claim. So if I was to ask you which color is red better, red or blue, what would be an example of your claim?
Red.
Could
Wait,
you
repeat
restate
that?
what color is better, red or blue?
Red. The color that is better is red.
Thank you. So another counterclaim, which would be the opposite answer.
The color that is better is blue.
Is blue. Thank you. So have you heard about those fraternities from University of Oklahoma?
Nope.
So there's a fraternity from the University of Oklahoma, and they, you know what a fraternity is?
Yes.
What is a fraternity?
That frat thing, right?
Yeah, but what does that mean? Explain to me like as if I didn't know what a frat
It's
was.
an outfit. So, thing.
But that's not what it is. Like, is it a person?
When
Is
people
it
live
a...
together
So,
in college.
okay, so in colleges they have groups of boys, and if it's a girl, then they have sorority, and they have social club and have initiations and such. And so this fraternity was on a bus, and one of the leaders, they were singing this chant, and the chant that they sung is okay, so it went there will never be a nigger in SAE. You can hang 'em from a tree, but they'll never sign with me. There will never be a nigger in SAE. And that was on camera, and then it got out, and
SAE?
yeah, that's the name of the fraternity. So they're Greek letters. So
I know. Ooh, I forgot what the S means. Doesn't the A mean like beta?
why would the A mean beta?
Alpha or beta? I forgot.
Alpha, because it starts with an A. So it stands for Sigma Alpha Epsilon is their fraternity. And so their letters are SAE. And so I'm going to ask, so I've created a list of questions, and I want you to create the claims and counterclaims for each one. And I'll give you a few minutes to do that. And then
Wait, do I have to?
yes, please. If you do it, we can leave. So,
The boys have gotten kicked out of their school. Wait, where is this campus located?
it's in the University of Oklahoma. It's in Oklahoma.
Isn't that the South?
Not technically, no. It's like the mid.
But isn't
West.
Oklahoma also a racist state?
It depends on what you call racist.
I mean, I thought a lot of people in Oklahoma were racist.
It depends on who you ask. So, some people say yes, some people say no. And then there are letters in the pink. And so either while you're working, or you can wait till you're done, but you have to make sure that you restate the answer, and once you're done, you highlight the R. So as you work, do it. So stop. Once you finish with your claim and your counterclaim, make sure that you've done that for both.
They can see her.
And they can see me turn the sound off. Yeah, except for if I use my phone to video, I'm the two. So let's stop. Before we go to the second one, can you highlight, make it reread it, make sure that you're restating and answering only. Because that's what a claim is.
Yes.
So read, see the first one, your first claim.
Boys should have been kicked out of school because they are racist.
Did you restate and answer
Yes, I restated the question and answer.
only?
Yeah.
No.
How?
So when I asked you which color is better, red or blue, what did you say?
I said because of that, but it is red.
That's all you said, which is correct. I just want you to restate the answer.
That's what they did.
No.
What other things did they do?
Because they're racist is not restating and answering the question. You're giving me your opinion, which is your evidence. So I don't want you to do that yet. I want you to isolate each part of race first, and then we're going to build on. See, why are you having more?
No. Oh.
See what I mean? So read what you fixed. So what's the correct way?
Yes.
So what's your claim, your first one?
Should the boys have gotten kicked out of school? The boys should have been kicked out of school. The boys shouldn't have been kicked out of school.
That's it. See, if you do less, it'll go by faster. We can move on to the next activity.
Blah. Okay. Should the fraternity still be allowed on campus?
All right. So just note, like, that wasn't a long video, right? But I mastered all the components I was asked to master. Now let me give you some context, some more context rather. Here we have the handout, right? This is what he was actually typing on. I had given him the claim and counterclaim, and every number I wrote that. And then he was supposed to make a claim and a counterclaim. And I also had him read aloud. I'm basically having him read aloud, not for my sake, I can see it, but I'm recording, I'm presenting, I'm going to be assessed. So when you're working and making your recording, make sure that you have evidence of what's happening. And maybe you add some things like saying things out loud or repeating things like, remember we went over this before, just to verify some components of that rubric that you're trying to master. I hand wrote feedback on this for him. And again, this wasn't for him. He's not a student who responded to written feedback. He's not going to read the comments. He's going to look at the grade and like throw the paper away. This was to demonstrate to my teacher, to my professor, to the powers that be in the state of New York that I knew how to give written feedback. And even now, as a look of this, I would amend some feedback that I'm giving. But for the sake of time, I'm not going to go over that anymore. Next, this is the rubric that he's being assessed on. If you're assessing and you have no rubric, like, what are you doing? So note, we're only focusing also on restating and answering. So even though we had the same rubric, we looked at it all the time, for this lesson, he's only being assessed on the R and the A. He's not being assessed on the C and the E. So we don't even reference this and that component. We don't need to read over it. Similarly, and I adjusted this rubric for his needs. I got it from another teacher and I adjusted. This is how we monitored progress together. He had a graph, I had a graph. My graph is much prettier than his graph. This is the one I submitted, but we both spent time doing it. I made this graph. We even talked about, the scale and how to space things out. Each lesson was dated. This is a 3 to 5 lesson learning segment. So there were 5 lessons in this learning segment. So there are 5 days where I'm tracking progress. In the first lesson, I'm not measuring citing evidence and explaining. In the second lesson, I did not measure explaining. But here in the third, we're measuring some more. Note too, in this lesson, for what he was doing, he had a tendency to trail on and say more than what the question asked. As I grew in my teaching practice, there was a style and a moment where we transitioned where we wanted to have students write a because statement as their full restate and answer. Then their citation would include something from the text and more of their own opinion at the end. So if I was teaching this another method, that because statement might be crucial to getting a correct restate and answer, but not on this rubric. For him, he needed to isolate his ideas so he could learn how to not go off the rails and get completely off track. But just note, I'm consistent with what I'm assessing him on and what it says in my rubric, right? If the because statement was needed, it would have been there, but it wasn't for this child, for this assessment. That's something I could think about for later practices. As we think about later and ongoing practice assessment, this document is the full assessment procedure for all of my lessons. I want you just to see that this chart is for one lesson. I'm assessing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times in one lesson. On the lesson plan handout, if you go back to that, the assessment protocol, this is what we're doing for lesson 2 that you saw. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times in lesson 2. And that video alone, that 7-minute video, you saw me assess 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. You're not having to write this out like I did for this exam, but this is how you should be thinking. I want you to pay particular attention to the feedback, verbal utterances. I could do something like, and he would know what that meant. That is assessment that I am tracking, and how I perform, also how my student performs and responds to me. After I teach the lesson, I'd fill in the chart to see how he actually did. And note, he knocked it out of the park for those segments of the lesson. But that doesn't mean that you're effective or not effective, right? If we get down here later, when he had to write that day, he didn't meet the criteria for the race paragraph for that day. That's okay. I'm tracking that progress, and that shows how I'm going to move into the final lesson, right? For lesson 5 of the learning segment, where I'm hopefully he's able to meet some standards, or I'm adjusting as things go. So just note, this is for 5 lessons, what an assessment data protocol could look like, and I've left this for you to review. Okay. So I'm gonna stop the share for a moment so I can just go to that last part of what I want to share with you today as we end. Now, my student, his name is Matthew, as I've stated, and he is extremely important to me and will always be extremely important to me, and I want to share why. Matthew identified as an African American or as Black, right? He was ethnically Dominican, but he called himself a Black boy. His mother loved Tupac. I love Tupac. He loved Tupac. So that's something that we incorporated into our lessons, not because he said, just because he said he was Black, but because he identified a love for Tupac. That was how us as a family, including his mom, connected. So this beautiful book of poems that Tupac had written. And I love the book because on one side, it has the printed up nice version. And on the other side, it has his handwritten text, and you see how he uses words and how he uses images also, and capitalization and numbers in his artistry. So this is one of the poems that we read together. I'm going to read it here for you now. In the event of my demise, dedicated to those curious. In the event of my demise, when my heart can beat no more, I hope I die for a principle or a belief that I lived for. I will die before my time because I feel the shadow's depth. So much I wanted to accomplish before I reached my death. I have come to grips with the possibility and wiped the last tear from my eyes. I loved all who were positive in the event of my demise. And we know that beautiful Tupac left this life too soon. In the same way, my student, Matthew Diaz, left this life too soon. As we concluded our tutoring sessions that December, so he had graduated in the spring, he helped me get my teaching degree. I am a teacher because of the work that he and I did together. That fall in December, he passed away from a heart defect, suddenly, tragically. Because I didn't teach at the school that he went to, I taught him after school in our learning lab environment, I didn't have a way to properly grieve with the community. It wasn't until I was able to speak at Hunter about this experience that I could connect with other people and grieve in a way that was appropriate. But in a way that I did that was I regretted nothing in terms of our tutoring sessions. I gave Matt everything I had, every single lesson. And we formed a strong bond that didn't die when he did. And so as you're tutoring, I want you to remember, as you're teaching, I want you to teach like it's the last lesson you'll ever teach, and it's the last lesson they'll ever learn. Because especially now, going through this pandemic, you know that you could see your children one day, and tomorrow, they could be gone. They could be gone because their family's moving. They could be gone because they're transferring to another school. They could be gone because they have a sickness. They could be gone because they lost a loved one. And you could be gone for all the same reasons or a plethora of other reasons. If Matthew had passed away and I knew that I gave him a piss poor excuse of tutoring for a semester, I would have felt disgusting. I would have felt guilty. I would have felt burdened. I would have filled with so much regret that I'd have to work out in some other way. But I have no regrets when I think of my time with that beautiful boy. I have joy, I have appreciation, and I have archival evidence of his thoughts, of his feelings that I could share with his mother, and that I could share with the world, that I could share with you. What we do matters. And I need you to teach like it matters. Not to teach like this matters for a grade, but to teach because what you do lives on into prosperity, lives on through posterity, and lives on in ways that we can't fully understand. So fear not and shine bright and have a wonderful, wonderful week.